Vancouver in April. So we're going to chat with Corine first and hear a bit about her background, have some questions, and then if you have some questions at the end, we can open it up and you can ask her some questions as well. And I do have the trailer for the Cirque du Soleil performance, which we are going to see, which is Alegria. And I can show that at the end, or if we run out of time, I will email this to everyone. So thank you so much, Corine, for being here and sticking with us through this technical difficulty. And we're really thrilled to have you with us this morning. So welcome, and love to just hear a little bit about your background and performing and working with Cirque du Soleil.
Thank you, Kerrie. It's my pleasure to be here. I'm glad we all figured it out. Nothing like a little technical education first thing in the morning, I'm sure. So I was touring with Cirque du Soleil Cusa originally, which if you've been to a Cirque show and if you're from the greater BC area, they've been to Vancouver a couple times, but I'm originally from Victoria, BC. And I grew up as a gymnast, like that was my whole life growing up. And when I was about 8 years old, ironically, I saw Cirque du Soleil Alegria, which is the show you're about to go see, on TV. And I became just completely, I fell in love. The moment I saw it, I thought to myself, okay, I have to do this. What are these people doing? They were wearing these beautiful silver stretchy unitards and they were flipping and huzzah. And it was so overwhelmingly beautiful. And that was kind of the moment where I decided that's what I had to do. So I did my whole gymnastics career. And then at the age of 18, I auditioned for the National Circus School in Montreal and I got accepted and I went and did their 3-year circus collegiate program. It's actually a trade degree, if you can believe it. And I majored in partner acrobatics and handstands. So basically we spent all day training acrobatics, learning how to juggle, clowning, performing, learning how to, stage lighting, all sorts of different things, all the many aspects of circus and kind of theater performance. And after my 3-year college diploma, I auditioned for Cirque because that was really my ultimate goal. There were other people in the school that they had different goals with circus, but mine was still 100% Cirque. So I went and I auditioned and I was one of the very lucky ones. I got hired for Cirque straight out of school. And for me, it was a new creation. So Cusa didn't exist yet, the show that I went into. And we did the whole 1-year creation process, which is pretty much the amount of time that it takes for Cirque to create a show from the inception with the artist. So it's definitely like a multi-year process to create a show with the directors and all the conception. But when it comes to having the performers there and creating the show from scratch with the human bodies, it's about a year process. So we spent a year doing that. And then the show went on tour. So it's a pretty similar process as with Alegria, except for Alegria is what we would call kind of the OG, the original, one of the original or earlier shows. Alegria has been around for a really long time. And they actually retired the show for a while, a few years. That show was entirely closed and they decided to revamp it and it's back on the road again. I've never seen it live. I will definitely be there watching the show this year when it comes to Vancouver because again, it's Alegria. So it's a beautiful show. You are going to be in for a treat.
Amazing. I saw one of my first Cirque du Soleil shows. I don't know if it was Cusa. I have seen Cusa in Vancouver and I left there and I was like, I need to join the circus. I want to be a gymnast. I bought a hula hoop.
Stop!
I did. I bought one of the Cirque du Soleil hula hoops and I'm in my late 20s at this point. It's like, it's not happening for me, but I was so moved by the music, the performance, the talent. It's one of my all-time absolute favorite shows to see.
Cool.
So I can see how if you saw that when you were 8 and already being a gymnast as you were, that the direction that you moved in. So it's so fascinating. So then when you tour with Cirque du Soleil, you're on the road, you're going to different cities and you're just doing that for basically a year? And are you practicing every single day? Because you guys have shows almost back to back, like
Yeah,
days a
that's a
week. Yeah.
great question. Yeah, so the average week is a 10 show week. We do 8 to 10 shows a week, and which we only have one dark day a week. So that's the day that we're completely off typically. So we'll usually run for about 4 weeks straight, doing kind of between 9 and 10 shows a week. And then on the North American tour, it was Mondays was the day off. And we would be, yes, training. Yes, there is some training, but not as much once the show is oiled and on the road and you're doing 10 shows a week, the sort of training you're doing is working out any kinks and bumps, or upgrading if there's some skills or tricks that you're trying to upgrade or bring into your act that maybe aren't in the act yet, or integrating new artists, because there are people that come and go, not often, but if somebody has an injury, or if somebody needs to take a pause from the show for personal reasons, we're bringing in new people that we need to reintegrate into the show. So that will involve more trainings as well. But the whole show is a bit of a workout. So our job is really to stay healthy and stay conditioned so that we can perform our act day in, day out consistently. That's the goal, is just to be consistent and on point every night for the audience.
Yeah. And are there medical teams or like trainers, sort of on site helping you stay in shape and keep you top fit and making sure you're healthy and not injuring yourself, all those good things? Yeah.
Yeah. So we had two physios that were touring with us all year round. And so as an artist, it's your responsibility to sign up for physio if you feel like you need it, if you feel something coming on, or if you've had some acute injury. And so they were there for maintenance and for kind of accidents that could potentially happen. It was a really heavy run. A city typically lasts around 6 to 8 weeks. If it's a big market, like say Vancouver or Chicago or New York, we were typically in a city for about 8 weeks. The smaller cities, we would do a shorter run, and 10 shows a week, that takes a really big toll on your body. And so they were definitely there for us to just maintain. And as a professional, it's definitely the artist's responsibility to maintain their body as well. So everyone is quite seasoned and professional. And so, I think we take a big responsibility on keeping ourselves healthy, because without your body, you're not on stage and you're not doing the show.
Of course. I've been to quite a few performances. Any Cirque du Soleil that's come to Vancouver, or I've seen a couple in Vegas. It seems like things don't really often go wrong. Like almost every single performance is perfect, but I wonder just how it must happen, that there's mistakes made, or maybe you're just so good at covering them up. Like it just seems flawless every single time, whether it's the music or the costumes or just the acrobats themselves or the jumps, the flips. You guys do such an amazing job. I guess maybe it's just the day in and day out practice.
Yeah, we're doing hundreds of shows a year. So that becomes very oiled. There are mistakes, it happens, but you're right. The cast is so very in unison, and everybody feels each other. And so things can kind of organically get repaired without the audience knowing, unless they've seen that show multiple times. Like if you're an audience member that comes in and watches the show once a week, which not very many people do. We did have some audience members in Japan that followed us on tour, and they were at multiple shows a week in multiple cities, but that's pretty unique to Japan. And so there are mistakes and there are accidents. It's human, right? So there have been major accidents. There have been some small things that people don't notice. And, oftentimes the little mistakes, or seeing a performer have a fall that is safe, is exciting for the audience, because it reminds them that this is human. Because eventually, sometimes you're watching and you get a little bit jaded thinking, oh, wow, these people are superhuman, but it's It's not. They're just humans like everybody else. We just have worked really hard on perfecting that one thing for, it's a 5-minute act or whatever it is. So there are mistakes, but we get pretty used to covering it up.
Yeah, it's just amazing. I just think there's the talent and the practice and the dedication that it must take mentally, physically, emotionally, like all of those things entailed. Do you still get stage fright if you were performing that long, or do you just get used to being in front of people? I would imagine. Yeah,
you get used to it. Yeah, you get nervous if you're doing something new. Like when I was performing and I integrated a new act into the show with my partner, and it was like our premiere night, our first night ever doing this act in front of an audience. Definitely your stomach is in knots and you're quivering, and you have to try to calm that, because shaking and nerves is not exactly your best friend when you're trying to do a handstand on one arm on somebody's hand. So you have to kind of harness that anxiety, but that's the fun. That's that rush. There's nothing quite like that, but you always get a certain level of excitement. I mean, standing on stage in front of 2,000 people is such a privilege, and knowing that those people have come out to see you and see what you and your cast have created and are putting out there, is that doesn't really leave you. The specialness of that and seeing people's expressions is so rewarding. And I think that's why many people perform, is so that you can touch people, like what you said, where you felt so excited and you went and bought a hula hoop. Like that's the dream for us. Like we want to inspire you, whether it's bring you joy or help you feel emotion. Maybe you feel sadness or you get scared and then you feel relieved. Like all those, I think the audience really comes on the ride, and that's the whole mission with the show.
I think that's one of my favorite things about Cirque du Soleil, is that it is so intertwined with all the emotions. It has the humor with the clowns. They're absolutely hilarious. I love them. And then even just the music, and it's beautiful. Like it just brings you to all different emotions. And then just seeing all the actual acts. And there's so much talent involved. And I know that they get performance with a variety of backgrounds from all over the world, which is really neat. So I don't know, how does that work? Do they have the show in mind? Like we're doing Alegria, we're looking for certain acts, and then they sort of do auditions to sort of suit all those different, because I know Alegria stands for joy in Spanish, and lots of the music has lots of Mediterranean and Spanish themes to it. So sounds.
Yeah, so oftentimes they'll up with a theme for the show, and they'll know that they want to have certain acts, and they try to balance everything out. So they want to have a certain number of aerial acts, like things that are up in the air with people hanging, and as well as ground acrobats, as well as, now some of the newer shows have water features. Some of the shows have fire, so they want to bring in as many different elements and levels. So we want height, we want width, we want groups, we want solos. So when they're conceptualizing a show, they try to balance it out with all that stuff, and they will sort of shop around, so to speak, on the global circus market to see what kind of acts are out there that they could potentially bring into a show. And then of course they'll revamp the act so that it suits the show, and they'll re-choreograph it, and the music will change, and the costumes everything will kind of become conceptualized for the show. And then after that, they cast what we call the house troupe, which if you know dance, it would be the core. And the house troupe is all the people that they don't do solos, but they support all those individual acts that are placed within the show. So the house troupe tends to do a lot more time on stage, and they are oftentimes more multidisciplinary, because they're going to be doing some aerial, some hanging stuff. They're also going to be doing some acrobatic stuff. They're going to probably be dancing more. And so they've got a little bit more of a well-rounded circus, I should say, training, whereas the acts themselves, they are oftentimes the best in the world at that specific thing, like say the best juggler in the world, or one of the best contortionists in the world, or things like that. So yeah, there's a big, huge variety of casts. Like in my cast, we had Spanish, we had Colombians, Chinese, Mongolians, Russians, Ukrainians, like you name it, people from all over the world, Canadians, the whole thing. And so we had a big cast of about 53 people, which is pretty standard. And then there is about 50 to 55 support staff that aren't the performers. So all the people backstage that are in charge of keeping our costumes intact, the physio, the office staff, like people that are planning our next move to the next city, lodging, all that stuff. There's so much. We had a kitchen on site, so we have cooks, people that are preparing food for us, because we live in hotels, right? So everything is kind of done for you. You live on tour. It is your life 100% of the time. Yeah.
Wow. So do you have friends all around the world now? All these
Yeah.
people? Yeah, that's so, I mean, I'm working together for that many months in and out, or a whole year. You must really become a family and just make new connections, which must be really neat. And do you keep in touch with
We do.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have a few really close friends that I still chat with from time to time. Of course, when life carries us away, we get consumed with our stuff. And the people that stay on tour, the thing that's interesting is that being on the road like that, it's such a bubble. You're so immersed, and time goes at a different speed when you're on the road. You're not, looking at things by months, you're looking at things by city. So, okay, we're going to Vancouver, we're doing 8 weeks, and you just knock off the weeks. And then you have a week off while you're transitioning to the next city. You take your airplane, you go into a new city, another 8 weeks. So everything is blocked off by city. It's not blocked off by holidays or seasons, or it's truly just city by city by city. And so time doesn't really flow the way it does for people on the outside. You miss marriages, you miss children being born of family members or friends, you miss holidays with your family. You're there, you're on tour 365 for the most part.
Yeah, it would be a tough life over time, I would imagine, or a schedule. It's like, I had one question about costumes. When you mentioned costumes early, I absolutely love the costumes, and just they're so well done. And how long does it take for you to get in and out of those costumes, and all the makeup? Do you have a makeup artist that's doing that for you?
No, no.
What?
So the makeup is conceptualized, and there is a makeup artist who teaches you how to do the makeup.
Okay.
And you get like a step-by-step. Step 1, apply white cream all over your face. Step 2, apply blush. Step 3, apply black line here. And you learn that. It takes more practice for some than others. And then everybody is responsible for their own makeup daily, men and women, everybody. And yeah, I would say I had 2 different makeups depending on what version of the show I was doing. And my quicker makeup was about 35 minutes. And my more complex makeup took about 45 minutes once it was really dialed in. That was kind of really, really nice part. You put your music in your ears and you just kind of meditate and paint your face for 45 minutes. And then you go and do your warm up. And and the costumes are everything's made specifically for you, all the way down to the shade of your skin. If there's a mesh part, everybody had their own mesh that matched their skin, and it's very, very, very beautiful. Like the detail is just beyond, but everything has to be conducive to the amount of movement that we were doing. So it may look like a giant cape, and it probably is a giant cape, but it has to be, lighter weight and easier to flow and not dangerous to catch on different things or get in somebody's way. So the costumes are really incredible. We would have like 2 costume artists that toured with us permanently, and 1 shoe person as well, because most of the shows include like some boots or different sorts of shoes. And so the shoe person was responsible solely for shoes, repainting shoes weekly, because the shoes get, scuffed up on stage, and the costumes always need to be mended. And then they're always hiring local help. So there would be a dresser, 1 or 2 dressers that were hired locally, usually from like theater productions and things like that, that help some artists get into more complex costumes that, they do up at the back, or there's some sort of mask or something that you just can't do yourself. So they would help people with that. And they would also help, with repairs and things like that, because some shows are very costume heavy. On our show, we had a lot of wigs, and that is very time consuming for them to maintain and wash and all the things. So,
Wow.
because things get pretty sweaty.
I bet. Do you keep your costumes then because they're made for you?
No. I wish.
Darn. Every time
I kept a couple of things. I have like a couple pairs of gloves and things that I managed to sort of sneak away. I had this beautiful little short-haired wig that was actually made out of rooster feathers. It was so, and I really wanted to keep that, but I didn't get to keep it.
Oh.
Yeah.
After every show, I think of every Halloween costume I ever want to have, because the costumes are just the best at Cirque.
Yeah.
So, but they have an amazing gift shop, and I have bought a couple just of the masks that they have, and they're just really fun to have in my tickle trunk. But it would be very hard for me to not be able to keep my costumes as well. Yeah. So now, what are you doing now? So you're not performing with Cirque anymore. Is that correct?
No, I toured with Kuza for 7 years. So
Wow.
I did North America and Japan, and I met my husband on tour. And then we kind of hit our early 30s, and our bodies were still up for it, but we had seen the trajectory of kind of our bodies and other people's bodies, and we really wanted to be the ones who made the decision to retire versus our body making the choice for us. And getting off tour it's not easy, because you don't really have anything on the other side. You've put in, for us it was 7 years plus circus school. You've put in a decade or a whole lifetime of training, and this is what you're very, 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 very excellent at. And then, like, what else? So we made the choice to retire in our early 30s so that we can start a family and do that stable. People do have families on tour, and that is a choice, and it is doable. It's not easy, but it's doable. But we just didn't want to do that. And so, yeah, we retired, and now we're personal trainers. We have a personal training studio here in Vancouver, and it's been great. It was a very difficult transition for sure, pivoting and starting fresh, making connections and friends in a new city when you've been gone for so long. But yeah, it's like having lived multiple lives.
Wow. That's pretty neat that you met on the road. Is he from Canada as well?
No, he's from Kazakhstan.
Oh, wow. Crazy.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, it's
That's
wild.
So neat. Yeah. Oh, I love it. So I'm thinking, because we may run out of time this morning because we started so late, unfortunately. I'm wondering what I should do if just open it up for some questions from our audience. If there's anyone out there who has a question, you can go ahead and put it in the chat box, or I'm not sure if you can unmute yourself. I can unmute everybody, I think. Let's see, we got the chat box. Okay, well, we'll keep chatting, but if you have a question for Corine, just go ahead, put it in the chat box, and she can try and answer it. Just trying to think, I had some other questions. What's the most surprising thing for you working with Cirque du Soleil? Or the most fun maybe, or is it the actual performance itself, or just seeing the audience? I'm one of those people that I'm always a standing applause no matter what. And when people don't give you a standing applause, I feel offended, because you guys just twisted and turned and jumped, and it's like, come on, you guys. That's an
interesting question. Yeah, there's surprises. One thing that was really interesting is you got to know a lot about a city and the type of people that lived there based on the sort of audience that they were. So some audiences were not demonstrative of, it was just an average applause night after night for something that in another city people would be overwhelmed with joy. Or so, and it was, yeah, and it was interesting, and you could kind of feel that sort of vibe out of the tent. You know, you go into the city and you realize it's a bit more of a reserved city. Maybe it's a smaller town. The bigger cities, people always had way bigger reactions than in the smaller towns, which is kind of interesting. Yeah, I think another surprise was not, I couldn't have been prepared for how deeply bonded I became to the show, and the quality and the energy and my cast, and like it was just so all encompassing. You live that, and it becomes like part of your identity. Which for me, that was really one of the hardest parts with transitioning out. And I didn't really realize that until after I left, how massive it was in who I am or who I was. Yeah, it's interesting. It was my passion for sure. And I think it is for pretty much everybody. I can't speak for everybody, but yeah, I would say so.
But living day in that lifestyle for 7-10 years, a decade, your whole life, really, I can see how it would be such a hard transition.
Yeah, and the responsibility every night of going on stage and doing such a big thing in front of an audience that has, you know, really high expectations, because it's a really high quality production, and not to mention like the brand behind you. It takes a lot of discipline and ownership of what you're doing and what your people around you are doing. That it's a really unique experience for sure. I'm seeing a question here from Gwen when you're ready.
Oh, okay. Yes, let's answer that.
You asked how many understudies are there for each person? That's a great question. None. So, okay. The main characters, like if you'll see in Alegria, there's a few main characters. You can tell who they are. They will have an understudy but it's a cast member that is already on stage doing the show. So there's nobody in the wings just waiting for someone to get sick or injured or need a day off to go out and replace them. So if somebody needs replacing, somebody has to get pulled from somewhere else in the show to replace that person, which in turn someone else has to get moved to replace that person. So there's a big trickle down when somebody's injured or out or whatever happens. For the main characters, those people as replacements will be specially trained for sure to do that role. Whereas for some of the smaller things, sometimes artists will just do that on the fly. Like so-and-so's out, you need to look, and we'll watch. Every show has been taped and recorded, Yeah, every show has been recorded. And so as an artist, you'll go and you'll watch a DVD of the show and be like, okay, let me see with a track of that person that I need to replace tonight. Because you may never have done that before, even though you've seen the show 1,000 times and you know the show like the back of your hand. You don't know what each individual person does and how they get from A to B to do a certain thing. So yeah, you're kind of always learning, and it ebbs and flows. And that's what made it so interesting. You get that new little fresh boost of adrenaline when you're going out and doing a new cue that you've never done before. It was fun. Any other questions? I have a few little tidbits I can share as well. If anybody thinks of anything, you can just type it in the box. So the big top, like Alegria, where you're going to be watching the show in the big tent, that seats 2,000 people. And that tent travels with the show. So it takes about 100 people to set up the tent. It's set up by manpower and woman power. It's all done by hand. It's old school. And the people that do that are called fly-ins. So that is their job. They literally fly from tour to tour to tour globally to tear down the tent. And then the tent gets shipped to the next city, and then it gets set up. You can look it up on YouTube and see how they physically do it. It's really interesting. And typically on a regular tour, there's about a week between shows. So like the show will end, say, on a Sunday, and then the cast comes in on the following Monday to start training, and then the show will like premiere on Thursday again in the new city. So it ends up being like a week and a half between show times, but it's about a week off for the artists. And we had a crew of about, like I said before, about 55 people. And many of those people were what we call technicians. So those people are always dressed in black, and they're responsible for the rigging, for making sure that our equipment is safe. They set up all the wires and the lights and all the bells and whistles to make the show happen. They're as critical as the artists. Without the crew, the show wouldn't exist. They are a massive component. They do a lot of work during the show behind the scenes that you can't see because they're dressed in black, but they're there and they're making things happen and they're making things move, and they're making sure some of the artists are safe or know where to go in certain scenes when things are really dark. Or yeah, they have a huge role to play, and they're very well trained as well. And they also tour with the show just like the artists. So they need, when someone is injured or sick in their crew, they need a replacement who knows what they're doing kind of exactly like the performers would. It's a really important job.
You can see that just walking in, and when you go to your seat and just looking up above you, and just, you can see some of the lighting men sitting up there, women, and it's just, I'm like, how do they even set this up every time and then take it down? It does seem like a huge production just to even do that.
Yeah, it is a lot. And yeah, I would say, I'm trying to think, on our show, I would say it was probably 90% men, 10% women, but there are some women and more. And many of the people are Canadian, not everybody, because circus is a global thing, but there were a lot of Quebecois Canadian technicians, and they're certified. Like, they actually have to do a certification and a course, and there's a lot of training to become a rigger. It's sort of a little bit like they have to know a lot about, levers and ropes and carabiners, and how to make sure things are safe, and what safety checks to look out for to make sure that like everything is load bearing and stuff, because there's a lot at risk.
So do you still do handstands at home, or what happens behind the scenes?
What happens? I do.
Yeah.
Handstands are a huge part of who I am. They always have been. I was the kid that was walking around on her hands at school, at home, and beyond. And I definitely still do handstands just because it makes me feel good and I love it. I don't flip much anymore. I've had 2 babies, so and my body feels a little bit ravaged from all the years and having kids and all of that. So, but I definitely still do handstands. I definitely still exercise, and we're passing the torch. Our kids are learning to cartwheel and handstand, and they're doing gymnastics, and we'll see what they end up wanting to do with themselves.
So cool. I mean, I guess you must have video footage of Kuza, and the kids can watch you perform live. Which must be really neat.
It is. They can't fully like wrap their heads around it, because we're so costumed and makeup. We don't really look like ourselves, and it's like it's so funny. It's such a different lifetime ago. They're like, "Oh, that's you? Like, you haven't always been my mom?" It's like, no, I did things before I had you. And
oh, you can't do that anymore. It's like, well, I've gotten older. No.
Yeah, I choose not to. Yeah, it's really cool. You are gonna have such a beautiful experience. Is this group all going on separate days, or what is the?
So we have 2 groups, one leaving from the BC interior, which is a little bit later in April. And then our Victoria group is just sort of the mid of April.
Okay.
So it'll be great. We're taking sort of 2 coaches down to see, and we've offered this previous years. Cirque du Soleil is very popular with our customers. They love show tours, and especially because of COVID, we just haven't been able to see any live production. These poor artists, the last 2 years must have been really difficult for those performers, just sitting idle, practicing and waiting. And
yeah, a lot of people, that's what they did. Some people had babies and got back in shape, and it gives you a little bit of a window to do that. And then figuring out how to go on tour with a baby and managing all that is a whole other undertaking. But some people kind of got forced into retirement. The thing is when you stop, that's when it starts to kind of hurt and fall apart. Like the key is to always keep training and always keep moving. And there are some disciplines in the circus that are really hard to do without that huge big top or that ceiling,
Right.
that height. Also without your team, like say you're a teeterboard artist, we had teeterboard in our show. So teeterboard's like a big seesaw, and you'd have like a group of, like say 2 guys will jump onto the end of the seesaw and 1 guy gets launched into the air. It's really difficult to do that without, you can practice trampoline and stuff like that, but it's still, some of those things can only really be done in the context of the big top and with harnesses and safety. Like some of the things that you see, many of those things are trained always with a harness on, and they just do it without a harness for the show.
Oh, wow.
It just reduces risk, like extra potential for risk. And so, there's just some things that you don't really want to be, or you're not going to be doing unless you're performing, because it's really high risk and it's your job. You do it for work, not necessarily just for fun.
Right.
Whereas like other things, like say hand balancing and things like juggling, those sorts of people train every day. They have to. You can't really you take a day off, but you can't take a week or 2 or 3 off of hand balancing. It's not ideal. And juggling, it's the kind of thing that really has to be oiled all the time. So every discipline is a little bit different.
Wow. Makes me feel like I need to go to the gym right after work, just
every day.
Every day. Wow. Well, I think, I know, as you mentioned, Alegria had not performed. So I believe this is the first time it is performing in Vancouver. So it's traveled before, but they're bringing it back and sort of has a new light on it. Looks like it's just going to be an absolutely fabulous production. And do you know what day you're going?
I don't.
No.
We know people in the show, so we're just going to ask them for when we can sneaky sort of get tickets. So
I was going to say, you get to go for free, right?
Yeah, we do.
Okay.
We do. We still have to pull some strings, but we do. And so we will ask our buddy for some tickets and go. We'll leave the kids at home. As much as I'd love for them to watch it, I'd like to also just watch it myself. And I'll definitely cry, because that's like my show. And my husband too. That's like the original. One of the more original iconic Cirque shows. The music is just epic, and it's impossible to watch that show without getting chills and goosebumps. And so I'll definitely get emotional, and it's beautiful. And also just to think about what those artists, like you said, have gone through in the past couple of years, putting everything on hold and waiting and wondering when are they going to get out there again? Are they going to get out there again? Like, what's going on? Cirque has been through a lot in the past few years. So it's going to be great, and you guys are going to just love it. It's going to be magical for sure.
I'm getting emotional just thinking about it. I think. Oh, well, I'm so thankful for your giving us kind of behind the scenes. It was so interesting to chat with you this morning. I love Cirque du Soleil, as I mentioned. It was one of the first dates my husband took me on.
Oh.
And he told me, I said, all I want to do is go to Cirque du Soleil. And he said, no, we're actually going to go to the Sunshine Coast. And I was like, I don't want to go to the Sunshine Coast.
Boring.
No. And then he drove me all the way to the ferry terminal and then handed me, he's like, here's your ferry ticket. And it was a Cirque du Soleil ticket. And I was like, and literally from that day forward, we haven't missed a performance. If it's anywhere like in Vancouver, there's been a couple in Kelowna, one in Penticton. I've been to Vegas. Yeah. Yes, we love you. And I love that you could share some insight with us this morning. And
what year did you see Kuza?
I meant to look.
They were here in 2010 and 2012. We were in 2010. We had retired by 2012.
It might have been. I'm going to go home and look in my booklet, because you'll be an artist. I buy the
program,
the programs every. So I have it.
We're in the program. You'll see my husband and I in blue. I have the short hair. We're doing hand to hand. I'm doing a handstand on his neck.
Yes, you're in there. This is so cool.
So you saw us.
I think I did.
Wild.
I'm going to double check tonight and email you now. Now I have your email.
That's so cool.
I know.
That's so cool.
Well, thank you for our customers too for joining us.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Many of them are here, probably already booked on the tour. Just a quick note that we have to finalize tickets by March 15th. So if you're not booked and you want to go, get a hold of us really soon by next week. But I think it's going to be a fantastic tour down to Vancouver and obviously to see Alegria. So thank you so much, Corine, for joining us. Really, really appreciate your time. So
it's my pleasure.
Yeah.
You all, I hope you all really enjoy it. It should be a beautiful, spectacular performance. Go and just take it all in. I recommend that you look more than just at what's going on right in the center and in front of you, but then widen it and look at what's going on further upstage and around. You'll see some, it's fun to kind of get like a big wide view of everything. So
I think that's what's so neat about the tent in particular, because there's a very good view from almost any angle, and all the angles are different. And a couple years I went front row, but then sometimes you can't see sort of further back what's happening. Like,
totally.
So you just kind of want to, as you said, look everywhere.
Yeah.
All over. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the theme of circus, is to perform 380 degrees.
Awesome.
And when we were creating the show, we really, everything was choreographed so that even the person in the cheapest seat in the furthest corner and the furthest back is still going to get a good show, and they're still going to see your eyes at certain moments of the show. And yeah, that's important. So I hope that still happens.
Yay! Well, I'm going to give you a standing ovation because I just think you're awesome. Yay!
Thank you. It's my pleasure. I hope you all enjoy yourselves, and it's how great that we get to see shows again. So yay!
I know,
yay
so exciting. Yeah, and this will be the first one, big production for us with Wells Gray Tours, which is just, we're so exciting. Cool. And now just hearing from you, it's just going in with this new knowledge and background makes it just so much more thrilling, I think, just knowing how much work and the time and effort that people take. So
that's good. Thank you so much.
Are you off to work? Are you off to the gym?
Today is my work from home day, and I'm catching up on a few things, and it's sunny here in Vancouver, which is just a blessing because it's not always like that. So.
Okay, we'll get outside and enjoy some sunshine, and we'll chat with you again. So
I will. Thanks, Kerrie. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.